All in all, how is everyone today? I'm good. Not streamed for a couple of weeks. Last week I had RSI problems, so it seems sensible not to do streaming to further aggravate my hands and whatnot. So I minimised what I did last week in terms of computers in order to avoid making it hurt even more. It's all over a week ago now, so we'll see how it go. I have my tea. Always good. Not sure what we're going to do today. I think we'll do something like catch up where we are with radio. I think we've got an outstanding pull request. In fact, I know we've got an outstanding pull request. Look at that. Decide if it's complete. If it is complete, then I would like to merge it and get a release done so that I can use that locally more easily and have the released version locally as well. I think that would be useful. So we've got a release done of that. And then pick something else to do. There's a number of things I'm sure on the issues list. Probably more we could add. I basically just work through some interesting stuff on this little go up. That's the plan. So let's start. Here we go. My little app running in Safari. This is the GitHub page for it. Radio doing what radio does. So we have the README and whatnot on this page. We have got pull request, as I said. Here it is. Allow selection by name with -- album parameter. So let's look at that. When uploading to an album using -- upload, allow the parameter to be the name of the album. We'll then look up the album's Flickr ID and use that. If there's more than one available choice, allow the user to select the intended album to attach this image to. Alright, okay, so yeah, this was work that we were doing on a given ticket. I think this was a spin-off of being able to upload by ID. So let's open up that one, have a look. 21. Uploading an album using -- upload, allow the parameters to be the name of the album. So I think this is, ideally we'd like the user to select. I don't think we do that yet, so let's look at what we actually do. So this is radio. We've obviously got it open. So go run main.go, upload. There's the -m for dry run, so we don't actually do it. We can thank Alex Chan for that. They came up with that idea a while ago. I saw a tweet about it on the Twitters, and thought, oh yeah, dry run would be really, really helpful. And since adding it, dry run has been really helpful for development because most of the processing happens on the upload command first, and then we do the upload. If we add all the pre-processing, look at what we've got, and then just stop. Absolutely wonderful. But yeah, -m for dry run, really helpful. Uploading to the SVR album, and that image doesn't exist, I think. So it's probably a thrown error. Which doesn't exist. See? No, it does the album thing first, and it's telling me, oh, look at that. These are all the available albums. And all the albums that match SVR, there's 29 of them, and it's asked me to pick one, so I take it back. We do actually support even choosing the one I want. Let's say I want number 21, Pacific Power. No processing. Error, exit status 1. That's unhelpful. All done. That's a Bit of a failure there. What that's upset about, I think, is that we're missing the actual image. Let's take a new image. Upload it. So we've got a new image for today. What should I take a picture of? Hey, why do I say that? We obviously know what we're going to take a picture of. Take a picture of the setup we're in. Right, let's take a picture of the camera this time. We haven't done that for a while. So I've got a new phone, incidentally. New iPhone 12 Pro Max. So I'm going to get really close. Like that. And we now have a picture of the camera being used for this stream. So I can grab that picture, hopefully, and then put it in my downloads export folder. Where is it? Come on. Can't see it here. That seems weird. Must have uploaded it. Upload complete. So it is. Share. I drop it. Neptune, which is the name of my main computer. I've not done a share to this new computer yet. Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't work. Otherwise, we'll do it via the. There we go, receiving it. Received item from Victory. Victory is the name of the phone. Neptune is the name of the iMac Pro. Looks like it's received it. So let's cp tilde downloads image something. Oh, it's a HEIC file. That's weird. Slash downloads export. And we can open a file. And of course it puts it on the wrong screen. So let's that over. I'm doing here. So a bit of OPSEC. Let's get it out of the way. To do that. There we go. Okay, so let's bring that over here so you can see the file. There's the file. And it's a picture of my camera. The camera being used to stream at the moment. Morning, John the Nice Guy. How are you today? I'm doing okay. So I have tea, so I believe everyone should have tea in the morning. Just struggling to get myself going. Going in the morning. We've had a little bit of drama this morning with my youngest son who's off to college he's at sixth form college, so he's getting his act together. And it's a Monday, so you know what happens. It's Monday morning. He's not thought about anything related to college for the last day, 2 days, so he's lost everything. So we've had to hunt for his keys, we've had to hunt for his earphones. What can you do? You don't like any hot drinks? Oh my goodness, how do you cope? Mind you, hot chocolate is really, really nice, isn't it? Hi, Build Simple With. See you here too. Another hot chocolate person, also a tea drinker. That's good. I appreciate teas all over the world, but it does feel quintessentially British in some way. Or maybe that's my British bias coming out. I think John's a caffeinated fizzy drinker. But that's need to get your tongue around, isn't it? I don't drink fizzy drinks at all anymore. In fact, I've never really been a fizzy drinker. I suppose that's part of when I was growing up. I'm really old. I think we've ascertained that by now. And when I was growing up, it was really rare in my family to be given fizzy drinks unless it was a really special occasion. And I think that's just carried on throughout my life, so I've never really been into drinking Coke regularly or anything like that. Tea was freshly available all the time, so yeah, lots and lots of tea. So I've got this file, which I've taken off my brand new camera, my new iPhone 12 Pro Max, which is a massively long name for a massively big phone, but it does have the best camera that you can get in an Apple device at the moment. So that's one I've picked. As you can see, it's really showing the how badly this camera is looking nowadays. You look at this picture and you see all this round here on the faux mirror section, and yeah, that's really what that camera is looking like now. I've had it for many years and it's now a secondary camera, so I've got a new camera now. Yeah, dust particles, because yeah, it's just sitting out there. I don't move it, I don't dust it. I use a Fuji X-T3 now as my main camera, so this has been relegated to webcam status, which is a remarkably expensive camera to use as a webcam, but I had it, so I used it. And I quite like the way the background goes out of focus, which you can't really see on that picture. I'll go back to that one. You can see the background there, in particular, how that's all nicely out of focus on my pinboard. So you can't see that clearly what's going on there. There's not much there, mind you. We've got, where is it? That way? This way. This there is a photo from the Severn Valley Railway, which they gave me for contributing to them. This way, that there is a postcard thank you thing from the Nimbella people, so it's full of butterflies, for a talk I did for them. And there's a few other pins and bits on that pinboard. I'm now super impressed with the people you see on Twitch and on YouTube that sort of just hold their hand up and move it around and point to what they're talking about in the background with no trouble. Struggling quite a lot. There's another photo of a train. No, that's in and out. Yeah, I need to move that way. Don't I? Difficult, great fun. And as I say, I'm looking like this, so you see my eyes go all the way over because that's where the self picture of what the monitor is. Anyway, where were we? Dust particles on my Sony, but this is an HEIC file, and I'm pretty sure we can't upload HEIC to Flickr, so we had better export it. I guess we've got an export option, have we? No, this is Finder. Let's open it in Preview. Or Acorn. Let's open it in Acorn. And I know we can export out of Acorn. Let's drop it into downloads, export. So now we've got JPEG version. There's our JPEG version. I don't need the HEIC one. Let's go back to the item and try the upload again. So we're going to, where is it? Go run main. Make that a bit wider. Go run main, upload, dry run into the SVR album. Well, the file size is larger than the HEIC version. Yes, HEIC is remarkably compressed, which of course is why Apple moved to it. But it's not quite as, what's what I'm looking forward to, widely used, widely available. Ironically, my Fuji generates massive RAW files. Because Apple is lagging behind, or maybe they don't have access in some way, but my Fuji gives me compressed RAWs or uncompressed RAWs, and Apple's built-in RAW stuff can't handle compressed RAWs, so I have to use the uncompressed ones. This was an image file, so it's that file there. I'm trying to upload to an album with letters SVR in it. So Audio is now correctly giving me the list of albums. We can see there are 29 of them. Arbitrary pick one, 21 Pacific Power. Oh, that's better, yes. So now we've got actions. Privacy will be set to family true. And the album will be added to Pacific Power. And then because we've got this -N for dry run, we've got would upload photo to Flickr. So it's not going to upload the photo because we're in dry run mode, which is the best way to do these things. Very helpful for testing. But that's now showing me the actual problem we've got. So if we pick a file that doesn't exist, it still asks us for the album. So we pick our album and then we get that error status 1, which is pretty horrible. So I think we'll log that as a bug. Actually, Shift F that. So I don't think we've got an issue for that already, have we? Support creation of album uploading. Allow use of album name. That's the one we're trying to fix at the moment, which is 21. Restore deleted files. Rerun files or previous uploaded files. Add photos to a group. Yeah, so we need a new issue for this one. Provide sensible error message when a file cannot be found. So let's grab that there. Are we in there? Yeah. When you a file name that doesn't exist, the output is not good. E.g. Actually, we probably want that version, don't we? We'll provide error of, and then we want that error. There. This isn't a explanation of the problem. Can do better. There we go. Now we've got the issue, so at least we have to get it. In fact, we might deal with that next, actually. Clearly, I don't come across that very frequently. The build simple with wants to know if it should check if the file exists before showing the album names. Yes, it probably should do, but it can't. Well, I suppose, no, it can't. The reason it can't is that we support multiple files. So if I was to do image star, for instance, it's now going to upload all my images that start with img_. And this is a use case that I normally use it in. I normally export a group of photos out of Apple Photos app, drop them into my export folder, and then do radio upload, and then image star. So then it will just bash or automatically pick all the valid file names. But I only want to select the album once. So I select the album before I start processing all the images. Now, having said that, there's no reason why we couldn't. Let's go up. So this is all done in upload.go. So the way it works at the moment, scroll down a little bit. We use, what do we use? Is it called Viper or Cobra? Cobra. We use Cobra, the command line framework for Go, which is quite nice for setting up command line apps. Has an init function for each command. So this is the upload command, and the init function adds my upload command function, which is down here. So here's upload command. And the important thing is we have this run closure where we actually do the work. We check for a file that is specified. We look for the various flags. So -- false for false upload, -- dry run, or -n for the dry run. And then we do album. So we look for album. And if we don't find an album, we choose the album from the list, which is where we pick the 21. Then having done that, we then iterate over all the photos that have been specified and try to upload them. So we needed to check the file. We need to sort out which album we're uploading to before we iterate over all of them. Well, I suppose we could do it on the very first one, store it in state somewhere else. Or we could check here, right at the top, where we check whether at least one file is specified. We could possibly check if the file specified actually exists. But that might not be a bad idea thinking about it. So maybe we put it here on line 62. Check all the files exist before we do actually any processing. Yeah, so we could probably do that. That might be a better way to do it, thinking about it. Yeah, good idea, that. So that's something we need to do. But we do need to go back to here, which is pull request 24. So I think that's working. I think we've completed pull request 24. I think it's sitting here so that I could come back to it for another day and check it's okay. And make sure that the code actually makes sense. One of the side effects of being the only person on a project is that you don't have someone else to review your code. So my solution to that is I drop the pull request up and then I look at a pull request later to check that I haven't done anything really silly. Not that it will actually catch everything, but at least it catches some of it. So here, list albums is another command in the system. So if we go back to that one, go run .go list albums. You can see this will list all my Flickr albums, all 348 of them. So we're reviewing it right now, exactly. And what I did with this particular work was I already had the list albums. So I thought, oh, I can reuse that code. But of course, all that code was sitting in the list albums command. So I refactored it, which is why you see in here, the list albums command has got a whole load of removal stuff where we've removed all the listing work out of list albums itself and put it into get Flickr client and get albums in particular. So the get albums function is an internal, in that somewhere. Get albums, that one there. There you go. So there's get albums, the function, and that's now in my Flickr.go, which lives in internal. So internal's got Flickr.go. So I extracted code that was living in a particular command, which is up here. It was in list albums. Stuck it into a function that I could reuse in multiple places. So here we've got all that refactoring going on. And it's quite simple. Get albums. Don't have any albums, there's no albums found. I've never actually seen that happen because I've only ever tested this against my Flickr account. And my Flickr account obviously has plenty of albums, 348 of them. So at some point, maybe there'll be another user of Rodeo one day in the future, and they will appreciate the fact that I actually checked for that and didn't die horribly. And then we just print them out in a for loop. Nothing particularly complicated going on there. Upload.go is where we actually do the work. So there's where we move to get albums. So we're now handling multiple albums. We started with able to handle one album. So initially --album on this function. If I copy that for a sec. So initially the first variation of this code did that. So you could pass in an exact album ID. So it worked on the assumption that there would always be only one album because it was always an ID. This will still error 1, of course. But yes, that's interesting. Let's make that a real one so we can actually see it. There you go, and it's correctly worked out that we're going to add it to Worcester because that's that particular album ID. And this one, incidentally, you notice it does it the right way around. It's going to error exit on a failure first. So yeah, we pluralized get albums because it's now returning a list. And I quite like everything to make sense. Didn't have to rename it, but I think we would have got confused later. Don't know about you, but I read code far more than I actually write it. And way more importantly, I read code many months after I've written it. It's out of the brain, it's gone. So keeping my code tidy and accurate is quite important to me in order to ensure that we're doing the right thing and we can understand what we've done later. If we've got one album, we just assign it. If we have more than one album, we're going to pick an album from a list. If we don't get an album from a list, we're just going to error and die. So you must have picked an album if you have selected -- album as your flag. Seems reasonable. Refactored the Get Flickr client, so we can use the capital one. So we've obviously moved it into the Flickr separate file. Don't know how much people know about Go, but lowercase letter on a function means it's an internal private to this file, and a capital G or capital letter on your function name means that you've exposed it out of this file into other files. So Get Flickr client now lives in flickr.go. We're using it in upload.go. So it must start with a capital letter, otherwise we won't be able to import it into upload.go. So that's the reason why that change exists. Obviously I dragged that function out of upload.go and put it into flickr.go. Here's get albums. We're now returning an array rather than a single album. So still get our Flickr client again. So we pick up our Flickr client whenever we need it. Is that a convention? John asks. A linting standard or compiler feature? It's a compiler feature. And implicitly a linting standard. One thing that Go did that I don't think any other language has done is that the Go compiler has a linter and a formatter built into it. So I'm running Go run here, but Go fnt will format a Go file. So Go format main.go will format main.go into the approved format with tabs, spaces, gaps between brackets and braces and whatnot for me. As you can imagine, because it's built into the compiler, everyone in the Go compiler, in the Go community, uses it. And apparently Dino does the same thing, and Terraform. Yeah, it's a bloody good idea at the end of the day. There are no arguments. You cannot argue about how to format your Go code, because the only way to format your Go code is the way Go format does it. Because why would you do anything else? There are some compiler features that are also strange. Like, it's very difficult to show you this. If I import something into here that I don't use, then the Go compiler will fail. So everything that you import, you must use. Otherwise it gets really upset. And it will refuse to compile. So that's quite interesting as well. So there are maintenance functionality, I suppose, built into the compiler, which can be quite interesting. Obviously, I'm using an IDE here called Goland, and it automatically handles the import list for me. I wonder what I use Buff.io for. Yeah, so I use Buff.io here. So if I was to comment all this code out, like that, then you'll notice that this has gone red. And if I hit save, oh no, maybe it doesn't automatically take it out. Maybe it only puts it in. If I try to run it now, it's all error. Imported and not used Buff.io. You can't have imports you don't use. The compiler will be really upset. And let's put that back. But yeah, there's quite a lot of features of Go I quite like. I think the only thing that I'm on the fence about is the error handling. The error handling's a bit weird. That's not weird, it's very, very explicit. You have to return an error from your function. There's no concept of exceptions. So errors are always handled locally at the point they occur. And then you have to manually push them up the chain if you need to. So here's an example here. So here we're doing an ASCII to integer. Right into an integer. Very type safe, very type strict, this language. And strconf.a2i returns the integer number and an error. And I have to check for the error here, and then I'm just going to return it out of this function as an error here. And it's something like this that is causing that particular error we're getting on file not found. It's related to me doing this, literally just passing an error up the chain without thinking about whether I need to do something different with that particular error. It does mean that you can't just magically throw an exception and assume the stack will unwind for you. The stack won't unwind. You have to unwind the stack yourself manually. In this particular case, if we take this one, here's that error, and we print the error out, and then we just return in this case because this particular function returns void. But I have to unwind the stack myself, which is a little bit unusual coming from languages with exceptions. I started with C though, so checking the error codes isn't that unsurprising for me. And I've got to admit, the ability to return two different parameters from a function, meaning that I can have errors separate from the actual value I'm returning, does make it a little bit easier than having to call a separate function or pass it in as a reference to get the error out again and all the other things we have to do in C. I think that's better. In that sense. But then I started on C++, and then we got exceptions, and our exceptions are a completely different way of thinking about it, and the way the stack unwinds is completely different, and I quite liked it and got used to it. So, what can you do? Anyway, where were we? So yeah, so we've got the getFlickr client there, and here's where we do the real work for this actual PR. So all those other changes are just refactoring and stuff like that. Retrieve the albums. So that's reusing the list albums functionality we had written. We have this whole photo sets and albums thing going on. They're photo albums. That's what we think about them in photography. You get a set of photos, they become albums in your... You group them together, the group of photos is called an album. I think we've all agreed that. Except Flickr. Flickr calls them a photo set. Internally. Externally, Flickr calls them albums. And I have a slight disjoint here somewhere, dysfunction here somewhere, where I use the word photo sets, but the function is called get albums. So the function should probably be called get photo sets. Or I should be using the word albums here. But I can't use the word albums here because I want to return a list of albums. So I'm using photo sets for the raw list that came out of Flickr. And I'm going to create an albums list here, which I will then return out of this function. And this is one of those type things going on as well, because getAlbums returns a list of Flickr photo sets. So yeah, it's probably named wrong. Might need to rethink how that's done. Which is the wrong type. It's the wrong object, or strut, because this function returns an array of albums, with capital A, not an array of Flickr photo sets from the Flickr API. So yeah, some more work needed to do there probably. One photo set found. Otherwise we would have exited here. So we just iterate over our photo sets and assign them and instantiate or create an album object for each one, and then we return it. So that's fine. Choose album from list. Oh, that's right. So the other new feature I did, this is review things quite helpful, isn't it? Because you forget what you've done. At least I forget what I've done. So this is a fairly good way of checking that what I did right makes sense later when I have forgotten what I wrote. So the other new feature we added, not only when you select a function by name, an album by name, there could be more than one, so we have to pick the right one. So I stuck it into a separate function, and I called it choose album from list, We get the list of albums. We get an album ID. And then we get, we return the album that we want. I wonder why we pass in the album ID. So available albums that match. Oh, album ID. Oh, that's a poor variable name, isn't it? That's the string that the user asked for. So yeah, so if we look at how that works, so let's go. Which one was it? That one there. That's 2 again. So that album ID is that SVR there. Ooh, that was a poor variable name, wasn't it? What was I thinking? What was I thinking? I don't know about you, but when I hear the phrase album ID, what do you think of? I think of a unique identifier. So album ID, when I saw it over here, I was thinking it was one of these. That's an album ID. An integer or a hash, as John says. It's most definitely not the search term that the user asked for. I think we should probably rename that. Because I'm confused. This time, I will get confused next time. So yes, that album ID is just printing here. Available albums that match album ID. So it's there. That's the album ID. Bad Rob. Okay, so we've got to fix that as well. Then what do? We've got to be careful because these things here are actually, these diffs are from this function. See, we refactored this function here. This is where Git's diff system doesn't necessarily work as well as we would ideally like it. So I refactored getAlbum into getAlbums, and then I added a new function called chooseAlbum from list. And Git is not language aware, so it doesn't realize that all of this is a brand new function. And these diffs here are actually related to stuff I did up here when refactoring getAlbum. You've got to be careful. Maybe you should do smaller commits. But even then, I don't know if the overall Git diff would have just reflowed its diff engine anyway. Maybe the commits are separate. Anyway, chooseAlbum from list. What do? We iterate over the list of albums, passing in the number. We set I to I+1 because Go is a sensible language, and obviously IDs in a for loop start from 0. Always count from 0. Lua, I think, is the only language I know that is one indexed. There's probably others. Confuses me every single time. Ask for user's input. Here we go. Select album, and there's that new reader. So we create a reader for standard in. We read the string up to a new line character, so i.e. the user hits return. And then we get the chosen album from it, and we have to lose that carriage return because it reads that carriage return in. That should be a number. Ah yes, really this should turn into a loop, but we'll do that another time. Yeah, so we're going to get a number, and that number will be this number here. So you should enter 28, the index, which is why I've called it index, not ID. And then we pick up the album from our index, subtract the 1 because we're 1 higher than the 0 indexed, and we return it. So yeah, that makes logical sense. I'm happy with that. That's all good. It does mean that if you pick an album that doesn't exist, like that, you just get a nasty error and exits. Let's face it, error handling in Rodeo is not good at the moment. And the reason it's not good at the moment is that only I use it. I haven't written any tests yet, so we only basically do the happy path with hard exits on failures that you're not supposed to do. That's fine, isn't it? We'll get to testing. I keep saying that. We'll get to testing. And it genuinely is high on my list. What? I'm not doing TDD, John the Nice Guy asks. No, I'm not doing TDD. It turns out that when you have a hobby project that you are writing to scratch an itch, which was, I wanted to upload some photos to Flickr, having exported them out of Apple Photos. I wanted the export thing to work and be usable by me. So I wrote that bit. And yes, I could have TDD'd it, but I probably still wouldn't have an app that I could actually use to upload and attach to albums, which is what I'm using today. So don't tell anyone, but I've actually got a copy of this in my, it's in user local bin Rodeo, maybe? No, maybe it's in tilde bin Rodeo. Which Rodeo? It's in, yeah, users Rob bin Rodeo. That is a copy of this development version because I needed the functionality to upload some images to an album that already existed. So I wrote it. Yes, no tests. Buyer beware and all that. I will write some tests though because I want to learn how to write tests in Go. And this is an awesome project for me personally because it's a lovely little command line app. Relatively complicated now, so it's quite a good app written in Go in terms of the functionality within it. Beyond Simple says, he's testing and driving the development at the same time, so a different TDD. Yes, exactly. Test-driven. Test-driving, test-driven development, yes. Proactive testing, I don't know. But yes, it does. It clearly needs actual tests at some point. It clearly needs them to be run when I open a PR. So at some point we're going to learn GitHub Actions in order to run our tests on the when we open a PR. So there's a whole load of functionality that I'm going to learn about writing Go applications and hooking them into GitHub through this lovely little application. But I still want the features that I need today written. We're in lockdown again now, so I'm not actually taking any photos again. So this might be the time to do testing. This functionality is 2 weeks old because of RSI issues, and I needed it for when I last went doing photography. In fact, it was that album there, 31st of October, which is why I wrote this feature. So who can be bothered with looking up IDs when you can just type a number in? Internal Flickr.go is our refactor. So this is all functions that we did have in other files. So get Flickr client, grabs our config, pulls our Flickr API keys out, our OAuth token, our OAuth secret. If any of them are empty, then you better run Radial Authenticate. Otherwise, you can't do anything with this tool. And then we just instantiate that client and return it. So it's just a way to get to client. There's an argument at some point that we learn how to store that client once we've created it, because I call Get a Flickr client at least more than once. Like I did it for the album list, I do it for the uploading. And we probably only need one in memory. So we could probably store this somehow as maybe as a local variable within this file. And then if we did that, we could just return it or something like that. So there's some obvious scopes for optimization there. But there's no point in optimizing something if we can't check that it actually makes a difference. So I guess we could learn how to instrument in Go as well and actually measure available memory or measure performance in terms of runtime and see whether actually caching that Flickr client is worth it. Maybe it's not worth it. So yeah, but we instantiate each time at the moment. And finally we have get albums. Again, we grab that config so we can pull out our user ID because we only want to get our own albums, so we have a user ID on Flickr. We store that into config. When you authenticate with Flickr, you get back the user ID that you authenticated with. So I can store that. Get the list from Flickr. There's the photos. Don't check for pagination yet. Notice marked as to do. Fortunately, you can get up to 500 in a single page out of the Flickr API. And I've only got 348 albums at the moment, or photo sets. So I've got a fair way to go before I need pagination. So in the principle of Yagni, you ain't going to need it. I've not bothered doing it. At some point, I will hit the 501st album, and then I'm going to need to implement pagination, and we're going to learn how to do pagination with the Flickr API and Go. But we don't need it today, so I've not bothered doing it. There's an argument that this should be paginated as well, this albums list. I mean, 29 is fine, it's not that big. But can you imagine what would happen if I did S, for instance? Yeah, it's 212 here. And there's a fairly strong argument that that should be paginated in some form. There's an argument there should be some sort of ordering. Maybe we should order by relevance. So show the first 20 with the next, but have the first relevant 20 at the top, maybe. There's a whole load of things we can do in here if we cared enough. But minimal viable product and all that, I don't need it at the moment. I know enough letters that I know I can go straight to SVR. Or in this particular case, I could probably do October. 15 is more than enough to just iterate through with your eyes. I can look and say, oh yeah, I want number 11 or number 1 or whatever. So yeah, we don't bother pagination. And here we turn those raw photos into album objects again. So we must have... Oh no, we return photo sets. We just filter them. We literally filter them. So yeah, this is a function that should be called get photo sets because that's what it returns. It returns photo set objects. Okay, so that's a review of this fairly small little pull request. And I've been talking for 20 minutes or something on it. We found 2 things we want to fix. So let's fix those 2 things. Firstly, that album ID, which isn't an album ID. Where was that? That was in command line Go. Down here somewhere, wasn't it? This one here. That is not an album ID. That's a search term. So Shift F6, search term. Okay, that's a far better name. What we should do is, I wonder what we pass that in as. I mean, I must have got album ID for a reason. So, let's have a look. Here's where we use it. And yeah, we're passing in album ID. We're calling it album ID. Oh, I see, yeah. Because if it's an integer, it is literally the album ID. Which presumably Get Albums is clever enough to handle. So Get Albums is clever enough to know. Oh, yes, it must be done in here. No, maybe not. Yeah, it must do. It must automatically handle it in Get Albums. I wonder how it handles that. Because here's where we get listers. Oh, I see. Yeah, there we do it. That's where we do it. So photo.id. So we get the list of albums, and if photo.id matches, then it must be that one. Ooh, that's a bit brute force. We could probably tidy that up as well. We're not going to, but we could do. Definitely an opportunity for optimization there, because if it is an integer, then we could probably, instead of doing get list, we could probably just do a get album on it or get photo set on it or something like that. Get the one item itself. Anyway, so that's why we passing in album ID into choose album from list. And that's why I called it album ID here. But when we get into choose album by list, it actually changes context. It becomes a search term. And now, Phil Silverwood has asked, is it always a string? And yes, it is always a string, because I go back up again. It comes up here. So we're in the upload command and we're in this closure. and the album comes from this line here. It has to be a string because it is coming from the command line. And I could, see, because it's here, it could be October, or it could be that one of these ones. It could be one of these. So I always pull it in as a string. I suppose if I was being clever, what I could do is pull it in as a string. Right, so pull it in as an integer. You could do something like album ID get int, like that. If error, so if there is an error, errors not equal to nil, then take that code and put it there. You could do that. Now album ID is now an integer. You can't do that. Yeah, album ID is now an integer. And albums is an array. See, now that becomes search term. Search term. So you could then do that. And then albums needs to be, is it a var? Album. Something like that. Single L for nil. You could do something like that. It's unhappy about albums there. Undefined variable albums. Now to find it here. You do albums like that. That becomes that. That's why. Yeah, there we go. You do something like that. That colon. When you put colon equals, that means define and assign, or declare and assign. So you declare the variable and assign at the same time. Because I've declared it here now, I just need an assign. But search term is being declared as a variable, a string type, and assigned at the same time. So that one is colon equals. I could do something like that, but now I've got album ID around. And here, album ID is a string. Because that was now search term. Yeah, so it's definitely stuff we could do to optimize it, but I'm not going to do all those changes now because I need to think it through and I really want to get this merged. So let's take all that out again. Search term is valid though. I definitely want that search term changed. And the other one we wanted to change was, I think get albums could be better named as get photo sets, because that's what it returns. So shift F6, get photo sets. Let's rename it to get photo sets. And that's done a refactor, and you can see down here 2 occurrences changed. So hopefully if we look in, yeah, see there you go, it's updated list albums and it's updated upload.go automatically for us. And that's one of the reasons that I really, really like using a IDE for things like this. So photo sets, here we go, get photo sets. That's way clearer now. Actually, let's check the other one. Oops. That one, we've called them albums. So let's rename that variable whilst we're here. That's not actually albums. Shift F6 again. That's photo sets. And why is it brought up a variable here? It's going to change. Oh, here we go. Occurrences found in comments, strings, and non-code. Look at albums and albums found. I don't want it to do those. I only want it to do these ones. I wonder how I tell it not to change these ones. Oh, there we go. Just press that. Do refactor. That's where we go. Because I think it was going to try and change that word there to photo sets as well. But that is user facing. And I want it to be called albums to my user. The fact that our photo sets of Flickr is an implementation detail that my users don't care about. I don't care about it. Clearly my users don't. And as I say, if you look at Flickr itself, they call them albums. So what can you do? Anyway, okay, so that's the other change we want to make. So there's all our changes. Git status. Loads of changes. Git diff. Let's have a look at those changes. So we've done a load of reformatting. Probably want to make 2 different commits for these. All one's related to renaming photo sets, and the search term one is a separate one. So let's do that. Git add -p. It's -p, isn't it? Yeah, there we go. Actually, let me clear that and start again so we can do it from the top. So -p means do it in blocks. I don't know what the P stands for. I should look it up at some point. So do I want to include this change? Each hunk, they call them. So yes, we want to pick up the photos, this hunk. Do I want this hunk? Yes, I do, because it's a photo set one. Do I want this hunk? No, because that is the search term renaming. Do I want this one? Yes, I do, because it is a photo set change. There we go. So now if I do a git status, you'll see that we've added list albums upload and Flickr, but we still have some changes in upload.go. Git diff -- staged. These are the changes we're about to commit. Let's have a look. And yeah, that's all photo set stuff. So yeah, that looks good. Okay, commit. Insert rename get albums to get photo sets. This function it's about function, is it? Function returns a list of Flickr.photo set. So it makes sense that the function name reflects. So because I use the word also, that's normally an indication that I probably should have 2 commits. And there are definitely purists out there who would treat that as a very big red flag. Me personally, I'd like my commits to make logical sense at some level or another. And for me, this is all one logical rename. So the fact that I'm renaming a function and also renaming some variables, I'm going to put it in the same commit, but I do know that other people don't think the same way. Also update variable related variable names as appropriate. That's the first one. So git diff. Yeah, build with simple puts them all together too. Yeah, and why not? And now this is a completely different logical change, so we can add this one separately. We've only got one change, so we can just do it all as one thing. Git diff -- staged. I'm quite a big fan of checking what I'm actually going to commit is a thing I think I'm going to be committing. And here, rename parameter. That's choose, isn't it? Lists a second parameter to search term. Slightly long, but who cares? This parameter is the search term in the context of this function, not a identifier. There we go. So git push those. We've got all our changes. Now we can merge our pull request. So we go back here. I refresh this. We should see down the bottom, wherever it was, not right down the bottom, here somewhere. Get albums. There we go, there's search term. So that one's correct, and there's get photo sets. There's a get photo sets down here too, probably. Yeah, there's the get photo sets function. Yeah, so we've picked up all the right changes. There's probably one up here somewhere. There it is, get photo sets. So yeah, that's now good to go, that one. So let's merge it. Git checkout dash main. So we're on the main branch. Git merged, no. Git merged dash no FF. So I don't want to fast forward it in because I want to merge commit. Pick up the previous branch, which I know is the right one, and this closes 24. No, that's not 24, that's 24, and it fixes 21. I think it's 21, wasn't it? Yeah, it fixes 21. There we go, git push that, and we're done. Have successfully committed that new feature to the main branch of Rodeo, so we're ready to do a release. It's gone 9 o'clock. I need to get some work done today, so we shall do that next Monday, presumably. Unless we do that refactoring around integers that Build with Simple brought up, because maybe we might want to fix that. But the trouble is, there's always something else to do, isn't there? So maybe we get this release out and then do the tidying up. Choices. Hope your Monday goes well. I hope my Monday goes well. In fact, I hope the rest of your week goes well. And let's see, we have a good week and get some good stuff done. Enjoy your week, and I shall speak to you again next Monday, if not before. See you later.